First of all, thank you for all the newbies. How many of you were there? This is your first meetup. I appreciate that you've come to see me talk as opposed to Robin, so I really appreciate that. And then, second of all, I want to get a gauge of who I've got in the room. So can you put your hand up if you come from an engineering craft? Okay. Put your hand up if you come from a sort of or working in a design field. And then there's the other third of you. So, okay, well, welcome. Thank you. I don't know where you come from, accountants, right? You're librarians, great. So my talk, we can't talk about the design because UX is not here today. Now, I haven't prepped this talk for about 4 years, so hopefully things will come back to me. But what I'm going to talk to you today is just build up a bit of credibility. So I'll talk about my career very quickly. I won't bore you to death, but at least you hopefully appreciate where I've come from. So the stuff that comes out of my mouth isn't just hot air. Then I'll give you a bit of backstory that's sort of fed into this talk. And then we're going to talk about design ownership. So by the end of it, all you developers, you're going to go back to your offices and go, screw you, UXers. I've got a voice. And all you UXers or designers, you're going to hate me for it. So apologies in advance. So first of all, a bit of background. Yes, I have been in the industry for about 20 years. So, you know, as a 21-year-old now, I started when I was 1. And I've spent a fair bit of that time in sort of leadership roles. So managing teams, building up capability within organizations, and having my hands in the tool as well. So Transpire, we're a digital consultancy. You know, we build using emerging tech. Previously we were called B2 Cloud, in case you were more familiar with that term or that brand. I've been there for about 1.5 years, coming up to 2 years. So, the backstory. Agile Australia 2014. We're going back 4 years. Who's been to Agile Australia? 2 people, wow. Okay, well, it's very expensive as opposed to UX Australia, but it's a well-put show. It's worth going at least once. So I had a talk at Agile Australia, and the topic was, you know, how to measure more than a gut feel. And the talk was all about doing user research, okay, and the importance of backing up and providing metrics around your research so that you can statistically make your insights significant. And mind you, I don't know why I put this image in there, but I have a feeling that people did more Tim Tam slamming and ate chocolates and had coffee than they actually came to talks. But one of the things that we did when I was working at DS at the time was we sponsored a coffee cart. And then there was a design challenge that we thought we'd solve for. So there's 2 coffee carts, goes for, I don't know, 10 to 15 meters, probably even longer. So people are sticking around at a line for about 15 minutes. They're going to be bored to hell. So we thought, well, what can we do? And I guess the UXer and me thought, you know what? Let's do a bit of research and incentivize people for it. So we had some messaging branding on our coffee cups, but we basically put together a 1-page survey. Closed answers, very easy to complete. And people on the line would get to fill this out. At the same time, we'd grab the details so we can start spamming them or, you know, doing work for them. But at the same time, we also incentivized a random winner to get I think it was an iPhone at the time. So. But what do we want to cover in the UX space? So a couple of things. I wanted to sort of gauge what people or delegates for the conference thought about the value of user experience or experience design in general. They thought it brought value at all, or was it an absolute waste of time? When UXers should be brought into a project. So often in the past, they will be brought up at the very end. I don't know how many UXers have had this done to them. Just come and do a bit of pixel pushing for me. Just a bit of UX love on that thing. So I wanted to gauge what the audience and delegates thought about where we should be coming in. If they thought we'd actually slow down the process. Oh, here we go, UXers, going to do 6 months of talking to people, building some personas, whereas Robin. And fuck, you know, we've missed our deadlines, geez. Or, well, no, actually, long term, they actually sped up our process and it's good for everybody. Coding skills. So, you know, Diane, as Rob mentioned, you know, as a unicorn, throughout the traps, I'd come across this notion that, you know, UXers should be expected to be able to at least write a bit of JavaScript, if not CSS and HTML. So I wanted to gauge what, again, I don't know how many people, 2,000 people who came to the conference, sort of designers needing coding skills. What sort of activities do they think UXers do? Do they think they just do personas, or do they just use Sketch and do UI, or do they do a little bit more than that? Do they get tactical? Do they get strategic? Do they act as a product manager or a product owner? And then lastly, this notion of design ownership, which for me was the most fascinating part of the conference. So this is a 40-minute talk, but I've cut it down to about 20 minutes, so I'm not going to go through all the results of the survey. But I thought I'd sort of share with you, for the people who want to appreciate, I guess, good research rigor. 385 participants completed the research, the survey on the line. 74% of them actually work in agile or iterative environments, so reasonably modern software and development practices. 72% self-rated, that they felt confident describing what user experience was, as opposed to being observed to show and demonstrate. And 72% of the people who completed the survey had some form of user experience capability or practice or discipline as part of the project team. So reasonably modern, understand user experience, pretty confident. So you think these are, they're going to be proponents of the new ways of doing things. So, but in terms of, I guess, these are the type of roles that filled out the survey. So you had software developers, BAs, agile leads, dev managers, delivery managers, heads of departments, project managers, and so forth. But just a bit of note to yourself, if you're getting somebody to transcribe your results that are handwritten and you're going to get your office manager to do it, make sure you tell them about what it is that Agile does, so that instead of Scrum Master, they don't write Serum Master or Iteration Manager instead of Iteration Manager, and JX Manager instead of what I would assume is, I have no idea what JX Manager is, maybe UX Manager. So I had to do a fair bit of recoding of the results and try to make sense of who filled out the survey. So if you do get time, I can show you some of the other results. But the fifth, I think there's 5 questions. The 5th question that I asked was around design ownership. I see UXers as the owners of the design in a project. If they are not there, the design should not be changed. 374 participants completed the survey, this question. I don't know if there's something scary in this chart that you can't see, but I could see it. But close to 50% of the people who answered this question felt that if there's no UXer, if the UXer is sick on that day or walking their dog or, I don't know, having a fridge delivered, we cannot touch the design. It's out of bounds. So I think that's pretty scary, right? And these are people who work in agile environments, understand what user experience is all about, yet they felt, the designer's the boss of the pixels, we better not touch it. Put your hand up if you agree with, I'm biased you obviously, but put your hand up if you strongly agree or agree to this question. Yeah, I thought so. It's just one guy over there who's having too many drinks. So I further broke down I guess, I recoded, as they call it in the research space, about, right, let's see if we can cut up this one question in many different ways. So I looked at roles. I thought maybe there's a huge skew. Maybe everybody who strongly agrees is a non-designer or is a product manager, and all the poor UXers go, strongly disagree, please. So I thought I'd try and cut up the data. And so there were basically non-project delivery roles. So people sat outside projects, for example, senior managers, general managers, and directors, who just point fingers at people and tell them to do things. And then people who sat within project delivery roles, maybe most of you in this room. So, BAs, Scrum Masters, developers, UXers, QA, and so forth. Still pretty scary numbers. So, less scary on the left-hand side, 48% of non-project delivery roles felt that UXers should own the project. Okay, fair enough, you GM things, but that's what I hired a UXer for, right? If they're not doing that, then what are they doing? But still, close to 40% of people who within projects, so 4 out of 10 people within your project who feel like, well, hang on, better not even talk about this single line or this header or this blue color because our designer's not here today. I don't know. I find that really unacceptable. So then I went back after this result and I thought, okay, well, let me have a look at what makes a project successful and what doesn't. I looked at a couple of things. So the ideal project, right? You've got a full-time UXer, you've got a dedicated researcher, you've got plenty of budget to do research, you've got flexible timeframes, right? How many people have had this project as opposed to this project? You barely get a UXer. The UXer is being a pseudo researcher with no money, and the time frame was due yesterday. All right, so we're dealing with this, right? Let's be honest. We're all pretty much dealing with this 9 out of 10 times. So what happens when you've got this scenario? Of course, research is compromised. If you've got a UXer who specializes in user interface design, right? They're not going to be able to do research properly, so they'll probably compromise the way they lead the participants or the way they've done their research objectives. You're not building a UX vision because you're always behind the 8 ball. You're always trying to keep the developers ahead and QA happy and everybody else in between. You're getting inconsistent styling because you get, a UXer 2 days a week over here, goes out, another UXer comes in and 1 day a week, slightly changes the rounded curves that Robin truly loves on his website and makes them straight edge again. Someone puts a 2-pixel line, someone changes to 3 pixels. So you start to get inconsistencies as you have multiple UXers that you're throwing into your project. Your personas are all made up, it becomes creative writing because you just haven't had the time to go out and actually do research, collect the evidence that is in fact, the personas are insights from doing user research. But you don't do that. I don't know what I've just done then. Okay. Design is often unresolved and it's just in time. You're literally designing. There is no incubation time. That's one of my other bugbears at the moment. I'm trying to sort of try and solve is educating people that designers, like developers, sometimes you just need to walk around the block. Sometimes you just need to grab a coffee and tell everybody else to shut up. Sometimes you just need to do something and screw it up and try again, right? Well, I'm often finding that UXers are often on the back foot because they're constantly being hammered by the ratio of 1 designer to 7 developers. So having to suffice and provide assets for 7 developers to keep them busy, so you're constantly under pressure. And because of that, the designers become a scapegoat. If NPS, score is low, well, UXer designed it. If the project's behind schedule, well, the UXer's fault. Oh, these personas look made up. Yeah, fucking UXer did that. Go and blame him or her. Right, so that's what typically happens. I don't know why I'm doing that, but it's doing something. Okay, so looking back at those projects, I thought, well, what makes a good project? The projects that I've worked on, why have they been successful? Timeline, budget, team culture, whatever that might be. So these are the sort of ingredients that I've managed to summarize over the years, and they're still valid, 4 years down the track. The team has design courage. And I'll give you some examples, but as a team of iOS, Android, backend, front-end, QA, support, whoever's in your team, they all have a bit of design courage. They've been empowered to have a voice. The organization, at a bare minimum, your team has human-centered design understanding. They understand the process, collect evidence, have proof points, do mixed method research, which is a combination of qualitative and quantitative to back it up, go through design iterations, get people to buy in, provide their input, prioritize, continually design and iterate and test with users, right? So the team understands that. Collaboration, so that you're not the only person working, but as a team, you're working together. We often talk about, dev pairing, developers pairing or pair programming. Sometimes you hear, UX pairing, you're getting a couple of designers to pair together. There's also, UX and dev pairing together. I've had the most amazing results when I've had my designers literally sit there with a sketch of the back of a napkin with an amazing, JavaScript or a front-end developer and then just smash it out. compared to the designer going to Sketch or Illustrator or Balsamic or whatever tool they're using, prototype it, showing it dev, coming back and forth. The collaboration is really key. Co-location, physically or virtually. So this notion of, I don't know, there's new methods of how you integrate, design within your organization. Previously, it used to be central. Telstra used to do it. It's a department called the Design Center. We're in level 3, XYZ in that corner. You come to us with a brief, we do a bunch of stuff, we chuck it over the fence. Then it's sort of a pendulum right to the other end where there is no design practice. Your designers are sitting within each individual tribe or, project team. So there's no cross collaboration. So 3 designers are designing the same thing 3 different ways. That was the other extreme. And now this is a bit of a hub and spoke or sort of a wagon wheel effect. So where you have a central, call it a practice, where like a guild, people come together, talk about what they're working on, challenges they've got, but as designers, they sit within their project team. So they're sitting with the development on one side, QA on the other side. So they're co-located. I don't know what that does, but it's a magic button. Everybody figures it out. Tell me. Humility. So I find there's 2 types of designers out there. There's ones who are really, threatened by up-and-coming practices and therefore keep everything to themselves and therefore they start to build a bit of an ego. Or the ones who are happy to share everything because they understand that what they do is not rocket science, right? And the more people who understand what user experience or experienced designers do, the better it is for the entire team. Empowerment, which I guess it sort of encompasses everything, that the team as a whole, not just the designer, is empowered to make design decisions, to have a voice around design. Right? Objective or subjective, it doesn't matter because they understand that everything needs to be proved, validated with users, and everything's a hypothesis until it's done so. And yes, that there is a UX leader, someone who sort of drives the process. Doesn't own it, but drives the process. So these are the ingredients that I've seen over the years that, I guess, determine a project and a team is going to succeed or not. So here's some examples. So this is a project for, I guess, a logistics company, and they didn't have a UXer. So, and you might laugh at it, but this was a business analyst who I think opened up Microsoft Word, screen grabbed a couple of existing screenshots, and they started doing call-outs and making enhancements in Word. These are Word boxes. It's pretty impressive, right? Microsoft Word, a BA doing this stuff. That shows about empowerment. This was quite a sad quote. Going to a kickoff or a project meeting. I think one of my lead designers was ill, so the tech lead had to, in effect, represent the UXer. This senior developer has been around for, 15 years, but this is what he said. I'm not the UX lead. They have no authority on UX. It's pretty sad at 15-year-olds in the tech space that you still feel like you can't justify yourself and you've got that imposter syndrome creeping through. It's pretty bad, right? Next one. She's the creative one. She'll spin her magic. Again, that sprinkling that we talk about. You just sprinkle a bit of sugar, magic dust. And this is a director speaking to a delivery manager pointing at a UXer. There's 3 people in the room. The UX has not even been talked about, but the director is telling the manager that she's going to go and do some sprinkling. So these are, I guess, not good examples of how you empower a team. I talked about, co-location, and we're at a point where you can have a designer or a developer in Japan sitting with your team. It shouldn't be an excuse. Who was I speaking to just about remote teams just before? I think it was actually, it was you, Sri. It doesn't matter where they are around the globe, unless there's an 18-hour time difference. Even that you can still make work. But having your team present all the time as much as possible is really important. And so there's lots of blog articles you can read about remote working teams and that it can work, right? There's no excuse. So, co-locating and having, this individual that you can walk around as you're doing your stand-up, as you're pointing at some printouts on the wall, you can do it. So a couple of examples here of, getting the team involved in design pitching critique, where, everybody puts some designs up, you've got 5 minutes to pitch your idea, critique and do some iterations. Doing interviews, usability testing. I ran a training course on, user experience 101 for a software company based in outer Melbourne. Just getting people outside the UX team involved. So in fact, in this room, there's not one designer. You've got head of delivery, marketing, product owner, technical writer, QA. Can't remember what she did. In fact, there's not one UXer in this room. So this is a company who realized, we can't afford to have, 10 user experience designers or experienced designers within our team. Well, let's just empower everybody else to be able to at least understand the human-centered design process. So that's like, this notion of investing in your team. A lot of bringing up ideas up front and early. So at this point, these sketches are done. They've been done by the founder of this startup, who's never drawn in her life in a professional technology sense, and a bunch of product managers and design business owners. So it gets empowering these individuals to go. How many of you who's a UXer tries to do a workshop that requires a bit of sketching on a sticky note, and the people go, "Oh, I'm bad at drawing. I'm not creative." Drawing is not a creative process. It's a process. And if you know how to do a triangle, circle, and a square and a line, you can sketch an interface together. So again, our role should be to be able to empower these individuals to be able to do some of our jobs for us, or at least have a voice. So this was another senior developer that I used to work with, who I managed to come across UXer, which is a prototyping tool if you don't know it. And he was flabbergasted. So, we talk about prototyping fast. Instead of him bringing up his front-end libraries and frameworks and so forth, he said, screw it. I'm just going to pull up UXer. It renders in a browser. I'm not going to use the code. And I'll be able to prototype my idea in like a fifth of the time. So he started doing that from now on before actually he started writing a line of code. So I guess that showed empowerment and confidence for this individual to be able to go, you know what? I can be a designer. I can be a pseudo-designer. One of the things that I like to do is actually involve other project teams or other crafts in user experience activities. We've got a project manager who's transcribing usability testing and facilitating usability tests. I've got product owners and scrum masters at the moment observing research. I've had BAs run design studios and workshops. So that's a screensaver. No. So just be able to sort of get our craft to as many people as possible so they can actually support making our jobs much easier. So this is probably it's a good example that while working at this BA was being exposed to many user experience projects and activities, and she managed to write an amazing blog on how to prepare for, again, when you're doing user research. And I can tell you, now, instead of telling someone to go and read Jacob Nielsen's, tips on doing user research, I get him to read this blog because it's written by a non-UXer in such a simple way. And the sort of things that she's found out is exactly what I tell people when they're trying to do user research. So that's a BA and a Scrum Master sort of facilitating user research and writing about them. Now, these sort of stories make me sort of get a goosebump. This is the sort of stuff that I'm passionate about. Getting feedback. So I tried this idea. It sort of worked to some extent until people got busy. This notion of, the hungry wall, where I used to force the designers to print the stuff. And I know you can put it into InVision and send people links, but I forced designers to actually print the design, stick them out on the wall, and get people to, as they walk past, to grab their coffee or cigarette or whatever, lunch, to grab a sticky note that's blue tack on the wall and just write a quick piece of feedback. So that sort of allowed the team to feel, I have a voice. I don't like this button over here, or I don't like, the way the table's done. Doesn't matter. Just give your feedback, the more the merrier. So starting to build this culture that, design is more than just the ownership of the designer. And funny enough, when I did this talk, I didn't actually go to UX Australia 2014. And Greg Petroff, I don't know if he's still there. He was, what is he? He's Chief Experience Officer at GE Money. And his talk was all about democratization of design. This notion that, the UXers should help build design communities within their organization, within their squads, within their departments, within their project teams, the design community. And that by providing the tools and the techniques for these individuals, I guess they're more likely to be able to influence and directly impact the experience that the designers are designing for, reducing the burden and the reliance on the UXer or the designer to be able to be present all the time. It's a bit of high pressure when you've got one UXer to 7 developers, right? One developer 6, the other 6 can carry. There's one UXer and therefore 6. Pretty much half your stories are blocked. It's not a good feeling to have. So, but I guess what I'm saying is that as UXers, if you're in the room as designers, it's not like we're obsolete. Okay? We still have a role to play. And if you are looking within your team about you're going to build up, I guess, design thinking and practice, a proxy personality or personality of the individual that you're going to get to sort of champion a design voice is important. They need to be able to appreciate empathy. If they don't care, and I guess Robert mentioned about empathy, right? If they don't care about how others are feeling, acting, behaving, they're probably not best suited to playing that experienced designer role. And this notion of good, better, best, right? I'm quite pragmatic. Start small, do until you know better. When you know better, do better. So you can start a little bit at a time, pick one person within your team to help you champion, and slowly it becomes infectious. Everybody wants to become a UXer. Hopefully, right? And the goal should be to evangelize the craft, not to own it. It's not about holding it, to your chest, putting a password on your sketch file so nobody can open it. You should be trying to spread the love. So, if anybody tells you UX is, it's like it's magic, it's pulling a rabbit out of a hat, go to your local pie store, grab a pie and throw it at their face. Okay. Did you like that animation? It was the only animation I had, by the way. Because they're not the type of designers that we want in our community. So what I typically do is run a poll as part of my presentation. I haven't done that today, but I thought I'd show you the results. So the other question I asked was, I see UXers as the owners of the design in a project. If they're not there, it should not be changed. And this was also originally from the, so at the UX Australia talk, they had these sort of repeated presentations. So this was a result of that one. And that's ridiculously high, isn't it? Not very cool. So just to finish up, a couple of quotes. So this is an ex-UXer friend of mine, which I actually just saw today. And he put it really well. So Tom, he said, a UXer's role is in effect to set up the process for success. And I like to, we talk about Agile as a process. Human-centered design is a process. It's a bunch of activities and tools done in a sequential way or in parallel to get to an outcome. It's not about creativity. I guess, and this is probably the message that I want to pass on to you before you walk out today is, we're facilitators of the process. We're not owners of the design. So anytime you work with a UXer who's trying to own the design, I guess, I encourage you to sit down with them, have a conversation with them, maybe repeat some of the things that I've said in this talk and hopefully get them to open up to allow you to take on some of their burdens. On that note, thank you very much.